Hey everyone, I'm out here in the garage. What are we doing today? It's cutting the valve seats for the 2008 Acura MDX's cylinder heads. So stay tuned. So if you're new to the channel, just want to welcome you here and hopefully you'll consider subscribing if you like what you see. Also, check out Car Apprentice on Instagram, X, and Facebook. I post lots of pictures and videos on those platforms before I post anything on YouTube. And occasionally I'll post things on those platforms I don't post on YouTube. Also, check out the website at carapprentice.com. And don't forget to hit the like button if you like this video. So what we're going to be doing today is cutting the valve seats for the 2008 Acura MDX's cylinder heads. So this video is going to be a little bit of how to, but it's also going to be a lot of how not to. Because I made quite a few mistakes, and I just want to point those out as we go along. So what happened here, basically, I ended up having to replace 3 valve seats of the 12 that I cut. So pay attention to the callouts in this video. And without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to primarily focus on the exhaust valves, which receive more abuse than the intake valves. We'll ultimately assess all 24 valves before wrapping up this job. Before we start recutting the exhaust valve seats, let's delve into why we're doing it. Over time, the valves and valve seats become worn and can develop pitting, causing them to not make good enough contact to dissipate heat. This can cause the valves and valve seats, namely the 45-degree angle of the seat, to burn up. A valve seat tends to widen to the point that the valve face no longer covers it, allowing carbon buildup to form. The result is undesirable cylinder compression and an underperforming engine. I initially planned on keeping 4 of the 12 original exhaust valves, since they're pricey at about $25 a piece. As I got deeper into this job, it seemed to make sense to just replace all 12. We'll get into the specification details, but if you have out-of-spec seats and you plan on recutting them, the existing valve's faces should be professionally reground to match the 45-degree angle of the newly cut seats. Shortcutting this process by doing what's called lapping, where an abrasive compound is used to reestablish seat-to-valve face contact, is not recommended and may yield unsatisfactory results. As the valve and seat heat during the combustion process, the seal between the seat and the valve face may be lost. Alright, so we're going to prepare to install the new valves. And so we're going to be replacing these 5 valves here. These 6 we're not replacing, and also this one here we're not replacing. So this is all the exhaust side. So I want to do one more assessment here before I continue, and that is to check the valve stem height on the other side. So there's a certain height that the valve stem should extend on the other side of the cylinder head. So we're going to check that first. I'm going to assess these 5 seats to make sure they're in good shape so I can recut the valve seats. So what I mean by recutting, there are 3 different angles here. There's a 30-degree angle right there. There's a 45-degree angle for our valve seat that contacts the valve face. And then there's a 60-degree angle on the inside here. One thing I noticed is I've got a couple nicks in here. I think those are self-inflicted. When I was doing some compression testing, I was using a probing device to check for top dead center. And I think that probing device got caught in a couple spots here. It looks like it's on the edge of the 45-degree angle, and it's more on the 60-degree side, so I think we should be okay. Because of the nicks in this one, I want to cut it first, just to make sure that it actually is okay. If it's not okay, we're going to have to take this cylinder head to a machine shop and see if they can replace the valve seat in this one bore. Alright, so here's a valve from number 6, which is right here. So again, cylinder number 4, 5, and 6. And then we numbered each one of these bores. So 1 through 5, and then number 6 here. So number 6. What I'm going to do is flip the cylinder head over. And I'll put a paper towel or something under here to hold this up. But what we need to do is measure the height off of this area here, the seat area. So measure the height from here to the top of the valve stem. So I've got digital calipers. And I'm going to measure in millimeters. We're also going to convert it to inches. So let me open this up like so. And I'm going to hold this right up against there like this. So you can see this little stem from the calipers is right on top of the seat and up against the valve guide. I'm going to hold it here with my finger. Just keep it nice and flush there. And I'm going to drop this down lightly on top of the valve stem. Right there is where it touches. 46.94 millimeters. And in inches is 1.840. The specification on the exhaust side is 46.68 to 47.48 millimeters, or 1.838 to 1.869 inches. So it looks like we're in pretty good shape there. Service limit on that is 47.73 millimeters, or 1.879 inches. These remaining 5, I'm going to measure. I'm going to put new valves in and do the same thing we just did, and check those out to make sure that we can move forward with cutting the seats. Here are the stem heights for all the valves. Every valve is within spec except for the intake valve in bore number 22 of the rear cylinder head. It's slightly out of spec, but it's not close to the service limit. So as recommended by Acura, we're doing a 3-angle valve seat cut. In order to do that, we could take these cylinder heads to a shop, but I'm going to do it at home using these cutters. So these are called Neway cutters. This one is a combination 30 and 45, and this one is a 60. The part number is 269 for the 60 degree, and for the combination cutter, it's 274. These are centering pilots for our valve guide, so we can get a nice concentric cut. Just slide the cutter over like that. This part goes inside the valve guide. Now I got 2 of them because I wasn't sure which one would fit. I was pretty certain that this one, the 5.5 millimeter, would fit. But I also got this one just in case our valve guides are a little bit larger. This is the 5.52 millimeters. Most likely I'll be using this one here though. This is a handle. This goes over top. So it's a T-handle. That helps us to get a nice clean cut. This here is a cutting fluid by Neway. They don't recommend using a petroleum-based fluid, so I'm using their fluid here. This can be used on hard or soft valve seats. The last thing is this layout fluid by Daikin. This is steel blue. And that's going to help us check to make sure our seats are cut correctly. Okay, so we're going to do this one first. I'm going to start by inserting the pilot. Now, when you install the pilot, you can see right there, there's a little gap. So the pilot in the valve guide should be above that gap. If it sinks down where this area here is contacting the valve guide, then this is too small. We need to go to a bigger size. So I'm just going to wipe this off a little bit and just insert it. We're going to start with this one like I said. Alright, so it is in there. It looks like it is roughly, I would say about 3/8 of an inch above the valve guide. Now what we need to do is turn this pilot clockwise and push down so we can get a nice tight fit. There's a component that comes with these. I don't have that, so I'm just going to use a drill bit. This is a 5/32. It goes right through this hole here. And I'm just going to turn this. That's good right there. Alright, so in the service manual, they recommend starting with the 45 degree first. So that is this side here. And then you switch to the 30, which is on this side. Then you go to the 60, and then you go back to the 45 to finish it off. So I want to make sure these cutters are actually contacting the 45-degree area correctly. I'm just going to slide this down. So this is the 45 side over here. Slide this down the pilot. Gently. And I'll just take a look and see whether it's contacting correctly. So real quick, if you did have to adjust these cutters at all, see right there, these are the holders for them. Just take a hex key and loosen it up. You can slide this up and down and then tighten it back down. I didn't use the Daikin blue enough at the outset. I should have painted the valve seat with the fluid so I could more visibly judge whether the seat was being cut concentrically. Alright, so I'm going to spray a little bit of this cutting oil on there, right around the seat here. Just kind of run it around there. Right, and we're going to start with the 45. There we go. Just gently put it on there. I'm just going to kind of run it around just to make sure it's cutting correctly. I think it is. So I'm just gently doing this. I'm not even really touching the seat right now. Okay, I think we're good. And then I've got this tool here. Now when you handle this, you want to handle this with two hands and keep the pressure downward. Light pressure. You don't want to go too heavy on this, just light pressure. So it's got a hex end on it. Like that. They mentioned in the instructions to make sure you always go clockwise. Don't try to back up, just go clockwise. Light pressure. You want to make sure you don't stop in the same place too. Okay, so I went around about 3 times. And I'm going to stop there. See how that looks. Alright, so this is after the first pass. As you can see, there's still quite a bit of work left to do here. It's kind of hard to get it in focus. There it goes. You can probably see some of the pitting there. So we're going to try it again and see what happens. Alright, so we're going to give this another shot. Make sure I got the 45 here. I'm going to spray this down with some cutting oil, or cutting fluid, not cutting oil. Kind of get some of the debris that might be on there off. And I'll put this back on. 45. This over it. And start cutting. Downward pressure. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Spray this down a little bit and take a look at it. That looks a little better. So I'll take you in one more time. So this is our second pass. I'm going to take you in now and show you what it looks like after the second pass. Alright, so this is after the second pass. You can see it's a little bit cleaner. Still got a ways to go, it looks like. Alright, so for good measure, I'm going to clean this off a little bit too before I continue. Got a steel brush here. Slightly brush that off. Okay, so that's clean. Spray this down again. And our 45. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Spray this down a little bit. Take a look at that. That actually looks pretty good. It's getting there. Actually, I'll take you and you can take a look yourselves. Alright, so this is after the third pass. You can see it cleaned up just a little bit better. Alright, so we're in close up again. This one side is still not quite right, but I think I'm going to stop for a second here. I still got to cut the other angles, so I don't want to go too deep. There's just a little bit of pitting on this side. It's not that bad though. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut the other angles. I'm going to start with a 30. 30 is on this side. Just going to put this in here to check it first. Make sure it's not going to hit anywhere. Actually, I need to move that up just a little bit, it looks like. So I'm going to move the cutter up a little bit that way. Tighten that down. Tighten the rest of these down. And we are in business. Okay, let me spray this down again. Cutting fluid. And make sure we got the right side. 30 degrees. It's up on this side. So light pressure. That's good right there. We're going to stop, pull this off. That looks pretty good. All right. Clean that off. And then now I'm just going to cut the 60-degree angle. Let's check this one before we start. Like that one could come down a little bit. So closer to the center here. Should be good. Looks pretty good. I'm going to cut the 45 one more time. That's the last step. This is cleaned off already brushed it off. Should be good. Just went around a couple times. So again, it's not going to be perfect over on this side, but it is pretty good all the way around, I think. So the true test is going to be trying a valve out in here and seeing how it fits. I'm going to pull the pilot out now. Alright, so there is the valve seat all cleaned up. So I'm a little bit out now, not focused in like I was. See that one right there compared to the one next to it. So this one looks much better. Alright, so I went back to this one. This is number 2. You can see, hopefully it cleaned up much better. There is still a little nick right here. That's on the 60-degree angle though, so that's not a big deal. There's some little bit of pitting, but I'm okay with what I see right now. Alright, so we're going to try our check with the die chem in this hole here. So I've got the valve. It's got a 2 on it. It's going to go right in there. So we're going to put some die chem around the valve face and put it in the hole and see what happens. Okay, 12 o'clock. So you can kind of see here it's centered right there on the valve face. It's kind of hard to pick up, but it looks pretty good. Alright, so I tried carefully applying just to the valve face here. You can see the markings. It looks pretty well centered. There's a little gap right there. I'm not sure if the die chem dried before I was able to check, but that is a little bit of a concern. And that is kind of around this position here. Right there you can see there's not much there. So I'm going to try this one more time. Alright, so I just put a little bit of die chem in this little quadrant here. And you can see right there, it did transfer onto our valve. And it's fairly well centered too. It is a little bit close to the margin. I'm going to try this one more time. I may have to move this down just a little bit. But I don't want to get too carried away with this though. So later on, I am going to check to make sure that these valves are sealing correctly. So for right now, I'm going to call this good. Here I'm measuring the valve seat in bore number 3. It's a little wide at 1.59 millimeters. While we're on the subject, the widths of the other seats were well out of spec. Following the technique I saw demonstrated on the Jamsey Online channel, I painted the valve face with a Sharpie marker and lapped it to verify the contact with the valve seat. Alright, so this is number 3. As you can see right there on the front. That's a 3. And it is a little bit off center, I would say. What I'm talking about is where the seat contacts the valve face. What I need to do is bring this down a little bit closer to the stem. It's a little bit too high. As you can see right there, there's a little bit of a mark at the top, so it's not bad. But I'm going to bring it down just a little bit. So in order to do that, I actually need to use the 30-degree cutter, and that'll bring it down closer to the stem. I need to be very careful with that because then I could drop it too much and we'll be in a different spot. If we have more of the marker up here, then we want to cut the 60-degree and bring this up a little bit. So we're going to go with the 30. I'm going to try to drop this down and see what happens. 30 degrees. So what I'm doing here is just wiping off the remnant so we don't introduce that into our 45-degree cut. So spray. 45, get on there. And then just one thing, when you clean this up, just use some acetone. That's all I've been using the whole time is acetone. Just so you can get all that Sharpie marker off of there, if there's anything left. Yeah, there's some on there. Alright, so I tried it again with the Dicam Steel Blue. And you probably can barely see it, but it looks like it marked it out fairly well. I have a tough time reading this, to be honest with you, so that's why I've been using the Sharpie marker. I want to make sure I get this as precise as possible, but I've measured the seat width here. It's about 1.5 right now. So it has dropped considerably from where it was at 1.59.